It starts with something most people wouldn't even notice. A dusty old journal tucked away in the back of a drawer, forgotten, faded, like it didn't want to be found. But this wasn't just any diary. Inside were page after page of handwritten entries that slowly unravel into one of the most disturbing murder confessions detectives had ever seen. What looked like simple musings from a quiet, loving husband soon twisted into cold, calculated documentation of a hidden double life. One that no one, especially his wife, saw coming. What happens when the man you trusted with your life secretly documented every gruesome detail of how he ended someone else's? What if he's still out there, watching, waiting, writing? Hey you. Yes, you. I know you didn't just stumble onto this video by accident. Maybe you're someone who dives deep into crime mysteries, maybe you're obsessed with those dark secrets hidden behind ordinary lives, or maybe, just maybe, you have a sixth sense when something feels off. But I promise you this, by the end of this story, you're going to get the exact answer you came looking for. The truth you're dying to know is in here, buried in the twisted ink of a killer's personal diary. And I'm going to guide you through every single chilling page of it. So don't just watch passively, stay with me. Let this unfold like you're there, in the room, feeling the tension rise, heart racing, as secrets begin to spill. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone you love and wondered what they're really thinking? We all assume the people closest to us are who they say they are, that we know them. But this story rips that illusion to shreds. Because what if the person who kisses you goodnight is the same person who detailed someone else's final screams in a notebook they kept under your bed? Set in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside St. Louis, Missouri, where life is calm, neighbors are friendly, and front lawns are always trimmed, this story begins with a concerned wife named Dana. She had no reason to suspect anything strange about her husband, Mark. He was the dependable one. The guy who packed lunches, coached Little League, fixed the broken porch light without being asked. The kind of man people would describe as solid, reliable, even boring in that safe, comforting way. But what Dana didn't know was that Mark had a ritual. After tucking the kids into bed and saying goodnight with that familiar kiss on the forehead, he'd head into his study, lock the door, and write. Page after page. Night after night. Not poems. Not work notes. But dark, meticulous accounts of things no sane person should put into words. And it would take a single moment of suspicion, one wrong turn, one misplaced key, for everything to unravel. In this video, we're going deep. I'm not just telling you what happened. I'm bringing you inside the mind of a man who seemed perfectly normal on the outside, but whose darkest thoughts were hidden in ink. We're going to follow Dana's emotional journey as she pieces together the puzzle that will forever change her understanding of love, marriage, and evil. And more importantly, we're going to break down what this story reveals about human psychology, about how some people are able to lie so well, even to those who share their home, their bed, their dreams. This isn't just a story. It's a warning. A reminder that monsters don't always come with scary faces. Sometimes, they come disguised as husbands, fathers, friends. Sometimes, they wear wedding rings. And when the truth is finally revealed, it doesn't just break your heart, it shatters your reality. Stay with me. We're only scratching the surface. The real shock comes when detectives realize Mark's diary entries line up with real, unsolved cases from across the country, cases no one ever connected to him. Until now. The pages of his diary aren't just thoughts. They're blueprints, confessions, evidence. And the moment they crack one entry wide open, they uncover something no one was prepared for. You want the truth? You're going to get it. But just when you think you've figured it out, something even more disturbing emerges. And trust me, you won't see this twist coming. So get comfortable, because we're about to dive deeper into a world where love, lies, and murder collide in the most haunting way imaginable. And just when Dana thought she had read the worst part of her husband's secret journal, she found one entry that was dated for the future, a chilling entry describing a murder that hadn't happened yet. The last entry Dana found wasn't dated in the past like the others. It was marked for next Friday, bold, clear, intentional. A specific time, a location she recognized, a method, eerily detailed. But the most chilling part wasn't the plan itself, it was the name. Someone she knew. Someone who was still very much alive. That was the moment Dana realized she wasn't just reading the broken thoughts of a disturbed man. She was staring into the future of a murder yet to happen. And worse, she was the only one who knew. But before we reach that chilling crossroad, let's take a step back. Who was Mark, really? How did this seemingly normal husband end up at the center of what might be a premeditated string of killings? To everyone around him, Mark had the textbook American life. High school sweetheart turned wife, 2 healthy kids, steady job in IT, and weekends filled with barbecues, yard work, and Sunday church. Nothing screamed red flag. No arrests, no odd behavior, just a quiet, meticulous man who preferred order, routine, and predictability. His friends described him as dependable, maybe even dull. But Dana had started noticing subtle changes months before she stumbled on that diary. He was sleeping less, locked away more. Conversations had turned into quick exchanges. Hugs were more mechanical. And though he never lost his temper or raised his voice, there was a growing distance in his eyes, a kind of vacancy that made her feel like she was living with a ghost of the man she married. Around the same time, Mark became obsessed with news stories, specifically those involving unsolved crimes. He'd stay up late, scrolling through Reddit threads about cold cases, watching hours of true crime YouTube videos, and even subscribing to criminal psychology podcasts. At first, Dana thought it was harmless. Plenty of people are into that kind of content these days. It's trending everywhere, right? The Netflix documentaries. The endless YouTube deep dives. Hashtags like #CrimeMystery, #TrueCrimeFiles, and #UnsolvedCases flood social media. But the difference with Mark was, he wasn't just watching. He was studying. And the more he watched, the more detached he became from real life, as though he was sinking deeper into a world that blurred fantasy and reality. One night, Dana overheard him on a phone call in his study. She couldn't make out everything, but the tone was low, intense, calculated. He ended the call with, "It'll be handled. No mistakes this time." She froze, heart pounding, unsure whether she was overthinking or stepping into something far darker than she ever imagined. The next day, Mark acted like nothing happened, smiling over coffee, packing the kids' lunches. But that eerie calm made everything feel so much worse. That was the night she started searching for answers. And that's how she found the diary, buried beneath a false bottom drawer in his locked desk, carefully wrapped in plastic, pages numbered, tagged, and marked with what looked like a private coding system. It wasn't just personal reflection. It was organized, systematic, like someone documenting experiments or crimes. But here's where things started to twist. As Dana tried to make sense of the entries, she realized some of the events Mark described didn't line up with anything in their lives, or at least, not directly. He'd mentioned names she didn't recognize, towns they'd never visited, and dates that predated their marriage. Yet a few of those names turned up in missing persons databases. Some were linked to long-forgotten cases. One was the subject of a podcast episode on America's Missing. Could it be coincidence? Could Mark have fabricated everything? Or was she living with someone who had been hiding a deadly truth for decades? Desperate for clarity, Dana reached out to her old college friend Chris, a police officer now working with a local department. She didn't show him the diary at first. Instead, she casually brought up the missing person Mark mentioned most frequently, Elise Radner. Chris went pale. Elise had vanished from a town 2 hours away in 2009. Her case had gone cold, but police always believed foul play was involved. The last known trace of her had been a hotel receipt under a different name, and the alias matched one Mark used in his journal. Dana didn't say anything in that moment. She just nodded, pretending to be curious about the story. But inside, she was unraveling. Still, this is where you watching this right now, need to be careful not to jump to conclusions. Because even though all the signs point to Mark, they also don't. That's the thing with true crime stories. The more you learn, the more you realize how many almosts and maybes there are. Was Mark really involved? Or did he get obsessed with these cases and start writing a fictional diary based on them? Was this his twisted form of therapy? An attempt to insert himself into unsolved mysteries to feel a sense of control? Or was someone else setting him up entirely? And here's a curveball. There was one name that showed up repeatedly in the margins of the diary, scribbled quickly, like an afterthought. Dana couldn't figure out who that was, until she remembered something. A man named Leonard Hayes who used to live 2 doors down. Quiet, older, lived alone, and moved out suddenly about a year ago after living in the neighborhood for nearly a decade. People said he left to be closer to family. But Dana remembered how close he and Mark had become in the final months before he disappeared. She even recalled one night where they sat outside for hours, drinking and whispering. And now, suddenly, Leonard was showing up in the margins of a murder diary? Was he a victim? A co-conspirator? A mentor? The uncertainty was maddening. Every new piece of information raised more questions than it answered. Dana was no longer sure whether she was uncovering a killer's confession or descending into paranoia fueled by tragic coincidence. Was she losing her grip on reality? Or was she the only one seeing it clearly? Every interaction with Mark now felt like a chess match. She'd smile, he'd smile. She'd ask questions, he'd give perfect answers. Too perfect. The kind of answers that felt rehearsed, controlled, as if he already knew what she was going to ask before she did. And then something else happened, something that made Dana realize she had far less time than she thought. She came home one afternoon and found the diary gone. The drawer was locked again. No sign of forced entry. No confrontation. Just empty space where the journal had been. But later that night, a new notebook appeared under her pillow. Just a single sentence written inside. In her husband's handwriting. I know you've read it. Now, tell me, what would you do if you were in Dana's shoes? Because from this moment on, nothing is safe. Not the house. Not the marriage. Not even the past. And the deeper she digs, the more it becomes clear that Mark wasn't just writing about a murder set to happen, he was writing about her. 2 of 2. The days that followed felt like a waking nightmare for Dana. Every room in the house became a trap of suspicion. Every drawer, closet, and glance carried weight. The man she once trusted more than anyone else was now a stranger. Worse, a potential threat. But the strangest thing was, Mark didn't act any different. Not one bit. He went about his routines like nothing had changed. He cooked dinner, helped the kids with their homework, watched TV in the evenings with his usual blank calm. But Dana noticed the subtle changes. How he never left his phone unattended anymore, how he always locked his study, how he suddenly started walking their dog earlier than usual and staying out longer. It was as if he knew she was watching him, and instead of confronting her, he was controlling the game. Determined not to lose momentum, Dana returned to the only person she thought she could trust, Chris. She arranged a meeting at a coffee shop out of town. When she told him about the diary disappearing and the note, his entire demeanor shifted. He leaned in, lowered his voice, and said something that sent chills down her spine. Dana, you need to stop. Right now. I'm telling you as a friend. She thought he was just scared for her. But when she pressed for more, asked him to check into the aliases, the names, even Elise Radner, he refused. Flat out. He told her those cases were long closed, that she was reading too much into it, that maybe she needed to take some time for herself. It didn't add up. This wasn't just concern. This was avoidance. She left that meeting with more questions than answers, and a nagging suspicion that Chris might be hiding something too. The paranoia tightened its grip. Dana started keeping voice memos on her phone, documenting everything, Mark's behaviors, conversations, odd phone calls, her suspicions. But one morning, she woke up and found her phone factory reset. All her files gone. And Mark? He just smiled when she mentioned it, as if daring her to accuse him outright. Still, she refused to back down. She remembered Mark had once kept a flash drive with backups of his personal files locked away in their garage storage safe. She waited until he was out one evening and broke into it. What she found wasn't what she expected. No murder plans. No diary backups. Instead, there were hundreds of photos, most of them old family pictures, but mixed among them were photos of women Dana didn't know. Random, candid shots. A woman pushing a stroller outside a library. Another entering a parking garage. All dated. All tagged with location data. That discovery unraveled her. She tried to run facial recognition on a few of the clearer images, using free online databases and Reddit communities that specialize in matching missing persons. One of the women was confirmed, Lana Whitmore, reported missing in Ohio 3 years ago. The others? No results. Maybe they were still out there. Maybe they weren't. But what scared Dana the most was the realization that these weren't crime scene photos or newspaper clippings. These were originals. Images likely taken by Mark himself. That's when she realized. He'd been watching these women, tracking them, documenting them.
But why?
Then came the voicemail. A blocked number. A voice she didn't recognize. Female, hoarse, shaky. Just 5 words. He's not who you think. It played once, then deleted itself before she could save it. She stared at her phone, unsure if it even really happened. The next day, the same voice left a letter in Dana's mailbox, wrapped in an old grocery bag. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. But it revealed something Dana had never even considered. The name Leonard Hayes, Mark's old neighbor, was a lie. The real Leonard Hayes had died 5 years ago in Florida. Whoever lived in that house under his name wasn't him, which meant Mark's friend was either using a fake identity or had stolen someone else's completely. And Mark had known. The implications were staggering. Was this mystery neighbor connected to Mark's obsession? Had he taught him how to disappear people, how to avoid leaving a trail? Or worse, had he helped? As Dana tried to trace the letter's origin, she realized someone was watching her now. Her laptop camera flicked on randomly. Her car's GPS started rerouting her to places she didn't enter. Her children's school called one afternoon to ask if she had changed the emergency pickup contact because a man, described vaguely like Mark, had attempted to check them out early. But Mark was at work. Or, at least he said he was. At this point, Dana didn't know who to trust. Every thread she pulled led to more confusion. And then, in the middle of one restless night, her daughter woke up crying. Said she saw a man standing outside her window, just watching. When Dana rushed outside with a flashlight, there were no footprints in the grass. Nothing on the security camera feed. But her daughter swore he was there.
Tall. Still.
Smiling. And now, here's where it turns again, because in the back of her daughter's closet, tucked behind old toys and school supplies, Dana found something she never put there. A small child's drawing. A house. 2 stick figures outside, her and her daughter. And a third figure, drawn in dark red crayon, standing in the window of the house. Watching them. Underneath it, a single sentence in a child's scribble. He told me not to tell you. Dana's hands trembled as she stared at the child's drawing. The red figure in the window seemed almost alive, glaring out of that crude, crayon-colored house. Her daughter didn't want to talk about it, just shook her head, tears welling up, whispering that he told her to keep it a secret. But who was he? And how did someone get into their home without triggering the alarm or leaving a trace? It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. Dana's world was unraveling, and with every day that passed, it felt like someone, or something, was working hard to keep the truth buried. The next morning, Dana rushed to share everything with a detective assigned to her case, a woman named Mia Calder, who had finally started taking her seriously after the strange voicemail and the discovery of the surveillance photos. Dana handed over the crayon drawing and explained what her daughter said. Mia nodded slowly, clearly concerned, but said they needed more than drawings and ghost stories. Dana pressed harder, begging her to reopen the cold cases linked to the women in Mark's photos, even offering the flash drive as proof. But when she opened the safe again to retrieve it, it was gone. The entire flash drive vanished. No signs of a break-in. No one else knew the safe code. And just like that, her last solid piece of evidence disappeared into thin air. Panicked, Dana checked the garage camera footage. But the files were wiped. Blank screen. Time-stamped, but with nothing on them. She went to her laptop to see if there was a backup, but it wouldn't power on.
Fried.
tech guy later told her the hard drive had been corrupted beyond recovery. In less than 24 hours, everything she had gathered, photos, backups, digital notes, was erased. It was a surgical cleanup. This wasn't just a coincidence. Someone was monitoring her every move, and now they were sending a message. Stop digging or you'll regret it. Still, Dana wasn't ready to back down. She drove 2 hours to meet someone who had reached out anonymously through an online true crime forum, an ex-private investigator who claimed to have ties to a similar case in Oregon. But when she arrived at the diner where they were supposed to meet, the man was already gone. The waitress said he left her a note. Too dangerous. Don't contact me again. Scribbled on the back of a receipt. That night, her car tires were slashed. No security footage. No witnesses. Just another warning, louder this time. The next betrayal hit her even harder. Chris, her longtime friend and the only person she thought she could count on, confessed something he should have told her weeks ago. He had known about the original diary long before Dana found it. Mark had come to him first, sworn him to secrecy, said it was a dark creative project, a script, maybe even a novel. And Chris believed him. Worse, Chris admitted that he had helped Mark clean up his old files years ago after a mysterious incident involving an intern at Mark's firm who had gone missing. The official story was that she'd moved to Canada. But now, with the context of everything Dana had uncovered, it sounded less like a relocation and more like a cover-up. And Chris? He hadn't just ignored the red flags. He'd helped bury them. Dana stormed out, feeling betrayed and completely alone. But just when she was ready to give up, an envelope slid under her front door. No return address. Inside was a blurry photo taken from a street security camera, Dana standing with her daughter at a playground. But it wasn't the image that stopped her cold. It was the note written on the back, "She's next." There was no name, no demands, just that terrifying warning. Dana felt her heart sink. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching her, they were threatening her child. She called Detective Calder immediately, but when she tried to show her the envelope, it was gone. The photo, the note, the envelope, all missing like it had never existed. Even the mail slot showed no signs of anything being passed through. At this point, Dana couldn't tell what was real anymore. She started questioning everything, her memories, her surroundings, even her own sanity. But then, late one night, as she was flipping through an old family photo album trying to ground herself in something familiar, she noticed something chilling. In several of the background shots, years apart, taken in different places, there was a man standing at a distance. Always blurred, always half-hidden, but unmistakably the same figure. Same posture, same hat, same blank expression. He'd been there, watching, for years. And when Dana zoomed in on one of the images and sharpened it through a filter app, her heart nearly stopped. The man was standing behind a window, the same window from her daughter's drawing. And that's when the final, horrifying twist hit her. The house in the drawing wasn't their house at all. It was her childhood home, the one she hadn't seen in over 30 years. And she suddenly remembered what she had long forced herself to forget. But she didn't have time to process it, because the front door creaked open downstairs, and this time, she knew she hadn't left it unlocked. "You said." The sound of the door creaking open sliced through the stillness of the night like a razor, and Dana froze mid-step, barely daring to breathe. Her daughter was upstairs asleep, or, at least, she hoped she was. Every nerve in Dana's body screamed for her to run, to lock herself in with her child, to call 911. But instead, she did something entirely irrational. She crept toward the stairwell, phone clutched tight, heart pounding in her ears, straining to hear more. There was nothing but silence. No footsteps. No whispers. No movement at all. She was about to dismiss it as her frayed nerves when her phone lit up with a notification, an email from a name she hadn't seen in years, Jenna McAllister. Her sister. They hadn't spoken in over a decade. Not since the argument that split their family into pieces and sent Dana spiraling into therapy and isolation. But the subject line of the message was impossible to ignore. "Did you get one too?" Inside was a single image attachment, A scanned Polaroid. A photograph of a bloody, mutilated doll placed on a swing. Dana knew that swing. It was in their grandparents' backyard in Maine, a place she hadn't visited since she was a child. Jenna's message said nothing else, just that eerie picture and the implication that Dana wasn't the only one being targeted. Shaken, Dana called her immediately, desperate for answers. Jenna picked up after the third ring, her voice hollow and flat. "I thought I was going crazy," she whispered. "But then I remembered something. About that night. The one you've blocked out." Dana's blood ran cold. There had been a night she'd spent years convincing herself was just a nightmare. But if Jenna remembered it too, maybe it wasn't imagined after all. Before she could press her for more, Jenna dropped a bombshell. 2 days ago, someone had left a package at her apartment door in Denver. Inside was a VHS tape labeled Confessions. Jenna didn't own a VCR, but curiosity, or perhaps dread, got the better of her. She tracked one down, popped the tape in, and what she saw made her scream. It was footage of their father, in the same study from their childhood home, speaking to the camera, describing things, horrific things,
Crimes.
secrets, things no father should ever say out loud. But the tape glitched halfway through, and the rest was static. And then, 2 hours after watching the tape, her apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, just a sign left on her kitchen counter, written in red ink, "The past should stay buried." Dana's knees buckled as she slid to the floor, overwhelmed by the implication. If their father had been involved in something all those years ago, something dark enough to haunt them decades later, how deep did the rot go? And, more importantly, was Mark somehow tied to it? Could her late husband have discovered some hidden truth about her family and used it for his own twisted purposes? Or worse, had he been part of it all along? Before she could call Jenna back, a knock sounded at her door. Not the front one, the side door. The one that hadn't been used in years. And then her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. No sender. Just a timestamp and a play button. Dana hesitated before tapping it. The screen filled with darkness, then slowly resolved into an image. Her daughter, sleeping peacefully in bed. The shot zoomed out slightly, revealing it had been taken from inside the house. The camera panned, pausing on her daughter's nightlight, then the closet door, and then it cut to black. That was it. No sound, no threat. But the message was unmistakable. They were inside, watching. And then, just when Dana thought it couldn't get worse, Detective Mia Calder called with news that shattered the last piece of her fragile sense of reality. "We finally traced the fingerprint from the diary page," she said. "It doesn't belong to your husband. It belongs to someone who was declared legally dead 28 years ago." Dana's voice cracked.
Who?
Calder took a deep breath. "Your father." That's when Dana remembered something her therapist once said years ago during a particularly intense session. Your mind will protect you from things you're not ready to face. But now the veil was lifting, whether she was ready or not. And deep down, Dana feared that the truth wasn't just darker than she imagined. It was something she might not survive. It started with the car. A dark gray sedan parked across the street from Dana's house for 2 nights in a row, engine off, windows tinted just enough to blur the figure behind the wheel. At first, she convinced herself it was just a neighbor's guest or someone who got lost and pulled over to check directions. But when the same car appeared again the following night, and then again the next morning, this time down the street near her daughter's school, it stopped being coincidence. The realization hit her slowly, like a cold hand tightening around her throat. She was being watched. Not just through her screens or through hidden cameras, but out in the open, bold and brazen, like whoever was behind this wanted her to know they were there. Every time she stepped outside, she could feel the burn of invisible eyes on her skin. And every time she tried to get a better look, the car would pull away just as quickly and silently as it had appeared. Then came the phone call. It wasn't a number she recognized, and when she answered, no one spoke. Just silence and faint, indistinct breathing. Then, a low whisper she could barely make out. "Stop digging, or the girl suffers next." The line went dead before she could even process what was said. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor in a trembling heap, struggling to breathe. There were no more illusions. This wasn't a mystery she could solve at arm's length. It was stalking her, surrounding her, threatening the only thing she had left to protect. For the first time since Mark's death, Dana was genuinely terrified she wouldn't be able to keep her daughter safe. She tried to go to the police again, but Calder had been reassigned, pulled off the case for reasons no one would explain. When Dana asked for help from another officer, she was given sympathetic eyes and polite nods but no action. There's not enough evidence, they said. Could be a prank. Could be grief talking. It was clear no one believed her. Or worse, someone did believe her and wanted this buried. With nowhere else to turn, she reached out to the only person who might understand what she was facing, her sister. But Jenna didn't answer, not by phone, not by text, not by email. Dana drove to her apartment in Denver. The hallway was quiet, her knuckles pale from gripping the steering wheel the entire trip. She knocked, then pounded. No answer. Eventually, a neighbor opened their door and gave her a grim look. "You're looking for Jenna, right? She left in a hurry 2 nights ago. Packed a bag, said she had to go off-grid. Looked spooked, like someone was following her." Inside the apartment, Dana found something chilling. A single envelope on the kitchen table, addressed to her. No stamp, no markings, just her name in black ink. Inside was a photo, one that made her hands shake uncontrollably. It was her and Jenna from their childhood. But something was wrong. In the background of the image, barely visible, stood a tall man in a dark suit. A man she didn't remember being there when the photo was taken. A man whose face on the back of the photo, someone had written, "He never left." That night, she barely slept. Every creak in the house, every gust of wind against the window felt like a warning. Her mind spiraled, cycling through every moment she thought she could trust. Mark's strange behavior before his death, the missing diary pages, the static-filled tape her sister described. Were these things all connected? Was her father's death staged? And who was the man in the photograph? Her memories from that time were a blur, fractured images and repressed emotions. But now, for the first time, she felt the past clawing its way back through the cracks. Her daughter woke screaming just before dawn.
"Nightmares," she said.
A man in her room. Dana tried to calm her, but when she entered the child's bedroom to soothe her back to sleep, her blood ran cold. The closet door was open, something she never allowed, and on the floor, half hidden beneath her daughter's blanket, was an old tape recorder. She hadn't owned one of those since high school. She pressed play, hands trembling. At first, it was static. Then, a distorted voice filled the room. "Every family has a truth. Yours was just better at hiding it." Dana clutched her daughter close, suddenly understanding that this was never just about her husband, or even her father. It was about her family, her bloodline, something old and unspeakable, something that had been covered up for decades. And someone, whoever was behind all this, was determined to make sure she unearthed every horrific piece of it, whether she wanted to or not. But the worst part was still to come. Because hidden beneath the recorder, folded neatly under her daughter's pillow, was a piece of paper torn from a diary. Not Mark's, not her father's, hers, from when she was only 8 years old. And what it said made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. Dana stared at the page in her trembling hands, her eyes scanning over her own childhood handwriting, the looping, uneven scrawl of a young girl still learning how to spell her emotions. The paper was yellowed, like it had been tucked away for years, yet the ink was untouched by time. But it wasn't the date or the condition of the page that made her stomach lurch. It was what she had written. "Daddy says I have to forget what I saw. He said it was only a dream. But I remember the smell. It smelled like the shed. And the red didn't come off my hands for days."
Mommy cried.
She said we'd never talk about it again. Dana felt like she'd been punched in the chest. The page unlocked a door she didn't know existed, a room in her memory she'd bricked up and sealed shut. Now, with that single torn entry, it all came crashing down. Her father's shed. The one she hadn't stepped into in years. He used to keep it locked at all times, and whenever she asked what was inside, he'd offer the same cryptic answer. Just old tools, baby. Nothing for little girls to worry about. But the memory was returning now. Not as a scene, but as sensations, screaming she wasn't allowed to acknowledge, the metallic taste of fear, her mother holding her tightly and whispering through clenched teeth, "We pretend it didn't happen, okay? That's how we survive." That night, after putting her daughter to bed, Dana walked to the shed behind her childhood home. The house was silent except for the sound of her heartbeat pulsing in her ears. The lock was new, someone had replaced it recently. She smashed it with a hammer, each strike echoing like thunder through the cold air. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dust-covered room that smelled of decay and oil. She expected boxes, maybe some gardening tools, but instead, she found a false floorboard near the back. Beneath it, wrapped in layers of tarp and plastic, was a small steel box. Inside the box was a VHS tape, labeled in faded marker, Winter '97. Do not destroy. She brought it inside, hooked up her old VCR, and pressed play, her hands ice-cold and shaking. The footage was grainy, the colors washed out, but she could make out the faces. Her father, her mother, herself, just a child, sitting on the basement floor, eyes wide and vacant. And beside her, slumped against the wall, was a man she didn't recognize. Bound, bruised, and silent. Her father was saying something to the camera, something she couldn't hear clearly over the static, but his tone was calm, like he was narrating a routine. Then came the part that made her recoil in horror. Her father handed her a knife. Her mother whispered something in her ear, and the screen cut to black. Dana screamed, yanked the tape from the machine, and dropped to the floor. It was impossible. She couldn't have participated in something like that. She wouldn't have. But the camera didn't lie, and neither did the feeling growing in the pit of her stomach. She had been trained to forget, raised inside a family that perfected the art of erasure. All these years, she thought Mark's diary was the key to unlocking his secrets, but it wasn't about him. It was about her, her family, the carefully curated lies she had lived for decades. The next day, she confronted her mother, who was now living in an assisted living home just outside of town. She didn't waste time with small talk. She showed her the tape. The old woman looked at it without surprise, just a tired resignation that made Dana's blood run cold. "We were protecting you," her mother whispered, voice hoarse. "That man, he was going to hurt you. Your father said the only way to make the memory disappear was to make you part of it. So you'd forget by believing it was your idea. It was his way of keeping you safe. From him. From the truth." Dana's world tilted. Nothing made sense anymore. The betrayal wasn't just from her husband. It wasn't even just from her father. It was the entire foundation of her identity. Her mother kissed her hand softly, a look of haunted sorrow in her eyes. "You don't remember because you were made to forget. But some things don't stay buried, Dana. Especially not when someone, and just when she thought the truth had been fully unearthed, another shock arrived in the form of a man at her front door that night. He claimed to be an investigative journalist, one who had been following the strange patterns of missing persons from her hometown since the 1980s. He had files, names, photos, patterns too precise to be coincidence. He had reason to believe that not only was Dana's father involved in a long-buried string of vigilante-style executions, but that Mark had discovered this just before his death. According to the files, her husband hadn't been journaling out of guilt. He'd been documenting what he knew in case something happened to him. In case they got to him first. And then the journalist handed her another diary, one Dana had never seen before. One written by a woman named Evelyn Dane, her grandmother. And the entries inside it changed everything, as he said. The diary smelled like mildew and dust, the scent of secrets left too long in the dark. Digging. Dana turned the pages slowly, afraid of what each one might reveal, but even more afraid to stop. Her grandmother's words were chilling, written in a cold, methodical hand, void of emotion, as if she were documenting research instead of crimes. The entries detailed an ideology, a twisted family code passed down like an heirloom, Silence is safety, blood is currency, and justice is a myth designed for those too weak to take matters into their own hands. Her grandmother had been the architect of it all. Her father wasn't the beginning, he was the product. And now Dana stood at the edge of this legacy, struggling to decide whether to bury it deeper or bring it violently into the light. But the decision wasn't hers to make alone anymore. Them up. That night, she received a call from her younger brother, Tyler. His voice trembled through the speaker as he said he found a package at his front door. No return address, just a thumb drive inside with a note that read, "If she doesn't stop, more blood will be spilled." The footage on the drive was taken from a drone, an aerial shot of Dana walking through her backyard, taken just hours before. Someone was watching her closely. Tyler demanded answers. "What the hell did you drag us into?" he snapped. But Dana couldn't give him clarity, because she didn't have any herself. All she knew was that the deeper she dug, the more dangerous everything became, not just for her, but for everyone connected to her. The next morning, she found her front window cracked. Not shattered, not broken, just a single, perfect crack. A message without words. Her instincts told her to run. Take her daughter and vanish. Disappear before the noose tightened any further. But that thought made her nauseous. Because if she ran now, she'd be no better than her family, masters of retreat, experts in denial. She had to make a choice. Protect her daughter by abandoning the truth, or face the possibility of more violence by pushing forward. Later that evening, Dana confronted the one person she hadn't yet dared to question, her mother's longtime caregiver, Jolene. The woman had been with the family for over a decade, always quiet, always kind. But something about the way she avoided eye contact lately, the way she knew things Dana never told her, made the hairs on Dana's neck stand on end. In the living room, under the soft yellow light of the lamp, Dana asked directly, "How long have you known?" Jolene didn't flinch. "Since the day your father died," she said flatly. "He left something with me, told me to keep it safe in case the past came back." She pulled out a leather folder from her bag and placed it on the coffee table. Inside were photos, blurry, black and white shots of people Dana didn't recognize. Victims, maybe. Locations. Newspaper clippings from the 90s. And at the bottom, a handwritten list of names with one horrifying detail. Every name had been crossed off. All except one. Dana's. Jolene leaned in, her voice low but steady. "Your father thought he could protect you from it. But he also feared you'd be the one to expose everything. That's why he gave this to me. In case you chose the truth." Tears burned in Dana's eyes as she whispered, "So what now?" Jolene paused, eyes clouded with something Dana couldn't quite read. Guilt, maybe. Or regret. "Now, you decide. Burn it all, and this ends here. Or keep digging, and someone else will get hurt. Probably you." And just like that, Dana found herself standing at a crossroads, knowing there was no good option. Only degrees of destruction. She could destroy the last remnants of a legacy built on lies and blood, or she could follow the path of truth into territory so dark it might swallow her whole. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to choose her daughter's safety over closure. But then came the thought that haunted her more than anything. What if her daughter, years from now, found herself standing where Dana was now?
Clutching a diary.
Reading about sins she never knew existed. Left with nothing but questions and the same impossible choice. Before she could answer, a knock echoed through the house. It was past midnight, and whoever stood on the other side wasn't a stranger. The door creaked open before Dana could even reach it.
Her heart jumped.
There was no one on the porch, only a manila envelope resting against the threshold with her name scrawled across it in thick black marker. She grabbed it, hands trembling, and tore it open inside the safety of her dimly lit hallway. What spilled out wasn't just more photos, but financial records, phone logs, and most chilling of all, an organizational chart that looked more like a family tree of corruption. Her father's name was just one of many. There were judges, local law enforcement, real estate developers, even 2 city officials she recognized from the news. At the very top, circled in red, was a name that made her legs buckle beneath her. Sheriff Warren Clay. He had been her father's best friend, her godfather, the man who consoled her the night of the accident, the one who promised her justice even as her world crumbled. And now, here was undeniable proof that he wasn't just complicit, he was orchestrating it all. Suddenly, so many things made sense. The way files disappeared after she submitted them, how key pieces of evidence kept going missing, and how anyone who dared support her investigation was silenced through intimidation or conveniently reassigned. It wasn't paranoia. It was a system designed to protect itself, an invisible network that thrived on silence, manipulation, and inherited power. She paced the room in a frenzy, her brain scrambling to catch up with the betrayal. Jolene, standing by the window, didn't say a word. Just watched. Too calmly. And that's when Dana noticed her phone, sitting face down on the coffee table, its screen faintly glowing. She picked it up and saw the last call placed just minutes ago. Sheriff Warren Clay. Jolene's silence was no longer just caution. It was complicity. Dana backed away slowly, her voice shaking as she whispered, "You've been feeding him everything." Jolene's eyes softened, but her words cut like knives. "I was trying to protect you. You think you're the first to dig into this? You're not. The others didn't have a daughter. You do." Dana didn't remember grabbing the fireplace poker, but suddenly, it was in her hand, and her grip was white-knuckled. Jolene didn't flinch, didn't move. She simply looked at her like a mother might look at a child who doesn't understand how the world works yet. "This goes so far beyond your father," she said. "This town was built on the bones of what he did. Pull one thread, and it all unravels." Outside, tires crunched graveled. Dana's pulse skyrocketed. Through the window, she saw the glare of headlights. 2 cars, no license plates, inching toward her driveway. Her hands shook as she gathered the documents and shoved them into a duffel bag. Jolene didn't try to stop her this time. She just sat down, calm as ever, as if she knew there was nothing more to say. Dana didn't have time to process it all. She grabbed her daughter from her room, still asleep and clutching her favorite stuffed animal, and bolted out the back door into the woods behind the house. Branches scraped her face as she ran blindly through the trees, her daughter pressed tightly to her chest. Every step was fueled by panic, rage, and an overwhelming sense that everything was crumbling around her. This wasn't just about her father's sins anymore. This was about generations of men and women who had built an empire on silence and fear. And now she was the last loose end, the last truth-teller they hadn't erased. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know who she could trust. But as she stumbled across the creek at the edge of town, chest heaving and adrenaline blinding her to the cold, she knew one thing with terrifying clarity. They were coming. And they were done playing games. The abandoned church stood at the edge of Miller's Hollow, like a forgotten monument to sins long buried. Its stained glass had long been shattered, its bell tower silent since the fire that supposedly claimed 3 lives 2 decades ago. But tonight, its doors creaked open under Dana's trembling hand. Inside, the air was thick with dust and secrets, the floorboards groaning beneath her boots. She clutched the duffel bag close, the damning evidence pressed against her chest like a second heartbeat. This was where it all began, and where it would end. The pews were empty, the altar stripped bare, but at the very center stood a folding table, a single lamp casting long shadows against cracked walls. Sheriff Warren Clay stood behind it, arms folded, as calm as if he were hosting a town hall meeting instead of welcoming the woman trying to destroy everything he'd spent decades controlling. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I knew you'd come," he said softly. "You're just like him.
Stubborn.
Righteous. Blind to what really matters." Dana didn't flinch. She pulled out a stack of documents and slapped them onto the table. "This is over. I've got recordings, bank transfers, witness statements. You'll burn for this, Clay." He chuckled, low and bitter. "No, sweetheart. I won't. Because this isn't the kind of town that lets its skeletons out to dance. You think the FBI cares? You think those reporters you contacted weren't already paid to look away? I've buried things you couldn't stomach, protected people you thought were heroes. If I go down, this town goes with me. Is that what you want? She hesitated and he saw it. That flicker of doubt. That sliver of guilt he'd been counting on. But before he could twist the knife further, the church doors creaked open again. Dana turned, expecting backup, maybe the only honest detective left in the county. Instead, she froze. Her daughter stood in the doorway, confused, clutching Jolene's hand. And behind them, a figure emerged from the shadows. For a second, Dana didn't recognize him. He was gaunt, hollow-eyed, his gait stiff from years in hiding. But the eyes, those eyes were her father's. He wasn't dead. Her breath caught in her throat as the realization sank in. The fire, the funeral, it was all staged. He had faked his own death. Jolene stepped forward, voice trembling, but resolute. He knew too much. The only way to survive was to disappear. Clay's face hardened, the mask finally slipping. You told her, he spat. You brought him here? Dana's father stepped forward now, and the weight of his betrayal hit harder than any bullet could have. I couldn't protect you from this, he said. I thought hiding would keep you safe. I didn't know they'd come after you anyway. Dana felt the room tilt, her world collapsing under the weight of truths too long buried. Her father had been part of it all. He'd helped build the machine. But when he tried to shut it down, they turned on him. Faking his death was the only way out. Only he never expected his daughter would pick up where he left off. Clay reached for something beneath the table, a pistol, old and scratched, but deadly enough. This ends here, he growled. No more stories. No more martyrs. But before he could raise it, Dana's daughter stepped forward.
Small. Brave.
Her voice barely above a whisper. You hurt my mommy. It was enough to freeze him for half a second. Just long enough. Dana lunged. The pistol fired, shattering a window and sending a deafening echo through the church. In the chaos, Clay stumbled backward, hitting his head on the altar's edge. Blood pooled beneath him as the silence settled in thick and final. The church, that hollow sanctuary of secrets, was finally still. Outside, sirens howled in the distance. Not the local force. This time it was the feds. Real ones. The kind you couldn't buy off with favors or fear. Jolene had sent everything just before they left. Backup had finally arrived. But just as Dana exhaled, thinking the nightmare was over, her father leaned in close, his voice barely audible over the approaching chaos. You did good, kid. But there's something else I never told you. The journal, it wasn't mine. And with that, he slipped into the shadows before the agents could see him, vanishing once again, leaving Dana with a new truth. The diary that started everything? The gruesome details, the chilling confessions? They were written by someone else. Someone still out there. Watching. Waiting.